My phone vibrated for the fourth time against my desk while I was reviewing a compliance report. I almost ignored it again. Then I saw Adrian's name. I answered quietly. Adrian, I'm at work. What happened? His breathing was fast, almost excited. My uncle Victor died. My hand froze over the keyboard.
What?
Adrian, I'm so sorry. When did $800 million, Tessy? I frowned. What? 800 million. He laughed once, breathlessly. That's what the estate is worth. Victor left it to me. I inherited everything. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Victor Morgan had been wealthy enough that Adrian occasionally joked nobody really knew how much money the man had, but $800 million was a number so large it didn't feel real. Adrian, are you sure? His voice changed instantly. I'm very sure. Then came the sentence that ended 8 years of marriage in less than 10 seconds. Pack your things and leave our apartment immediately. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the screen. Excuse me? You heard me. I lowered my voice because two co-workers were only a few desks away. Your uncle died today and you're calling me at work to throw me out. I'm finally being honest. About what? About us. His tone had become almost smug. For years, I've lived with you acting like you were the responsible one because you made more money. You paid the bills. You handled everything. You made every financial decision. I handled things because your income wasn't stable. Exactly. I went silent. Adrian continued. I hated depending on you, Tessy. I hated feeling like I needed your permission to breathe. But that's finished now. Because of money? Because I don't need you anymore. The words landed harder than I expected. I looked down at the report on my computer screen, but the numbers blurred together. This was the same man whose rent I had covered when his first business collapsed. The same man whose debts I had helped restructure without ever mentioning them to his family. The same man I had defended every time someone implied he wasn't ambitious enough. And now, because he believed $800 million belonged to him, he spoke as though I had been a temporary inconvenience. I leaned back slowly. You received this news today? This morning. From Victor's attorney? Yes. Did you attend a formal reading? Silence. Did you actually read the entire will? Adrian scoffed. Don't start doing that. Doing what? Talking to me like I'm stupid. I asked a question. I know what I heard. $800 million. Something about his answer bothered me. Not because I doubted Victor had that kind of wealth, because Adrian kept repeating the number while avoiding every question about the actual documents. But I didn't push. He mistook my silence for defeat. Your suitcases are already packed, he said. There'll be separation papers on the table when you get home. Sign them, take your things, and we can both move on. You packed my belongings? Yes. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I remembered Victor sitting across from me months earlier after a family dinner. He had looked toward Adrian, then said quietly, money doesn't change character, Tessy. It gives character permission. At the time, I thought it was simply an old man making an observation. Now I wasn't so sure. I'll see you tonight, I said. Adrian laughed. Don't make this dramatic. Then he hung up. I did something he clearly wasn't expecting. I finished my workday. No frantic calls, no begging, no racing home to save a marriage Adrian had already decided was worthless the moment he imagined himself rich. When I finally opened our apartment door that evening, Adrian was waiting. He wore a charcoal jacket I had bought him for our anniversary. Two of my suitcases stood beside the entrance, and on the dining table sat a neat stack of separation papers. Sit, he said. I walked to the table. He pushed a pen toward me. I had everything prepared. I read every page carefully. Adrian had been so desperate to leave his old life behind that the agreement divided our existing assets cleanly and made no attempt to drag the separation into months of fighting. When I reached the final page, I signed. Adrian's smile vanished. That's it? I put the pen down. What were you expecting? I don't know. Tears. An argument. I picked up my copy. Enjoy your new fortune, Adrian. His confidence returned. I intend to. I lifted my suitcase and walked toward the door. Then I stopped, because one question had been bothering me since that afternoon. Not whether Victor Morgan had $800 million, not whether Adrian was named somewhere in his estate. Something much simpler. If Adrian had truly inherited everything exactly the way he claimed, why was he the only person celebrating before he had even finished reading the will? I spent that night in a small hotel 3 blocks from my office. Nothing luxurious, nothing dramatic, just a clean room, a locked door, and enough silence to hear my phone buzzing every few minutes on the bedside table. The first message from Adrian came before midnight. Things are moving fast. The second came 10 minutes later. I've already looked at properties. Then, you wouldn't believe the kind of places I can afford now. I stared at the screen without answering. By 1 in the morning, he had sent me links to a penthouse, a sports car, and a private investment firm. The money had not reached his account. The estate had not been settled. Yet in Adrian's mind, the life we had built together had already become something embarrassing he needed to escape. I turned my phone face down, but sleep didn't come easily. Not because I wanted him back, because I kept thinking about how quickly he had changed, or maybe how quickly he had stopped pretending. Years earlier, when Adrian's first business collapsed, we had been 3 months behind on several payments. He had sat at our kitchen table with his head in his hands. I ruined everything, he had whispered. I had opened my laptop. No, we fix it. Tessy, I can't even cover half the rent, then I'll cover it until you can. He had looked at me with tears in his eyes. You don't have to do that. I know, and I did it anyway. When another venture failed, I helped negotiate his debts. When his income disappeared for months, I paid groceries, utilities, insurance, and rent. I never brought it up during arguments. I never announced it in front of anyone. But somewhere along the way, Adrian stopped seeing my help as loyalty. He began seeing it as proof that I had power over him. Victor noticed. Once, during dinner, Adrian had complained that I was too careful with money. Victor had smiled at me. Careful is why people stay wealthy. Adrian rolled his eyes. You always take her side. Victor had looked at him calmly. No, I take the side of whoever understands consequences. At the time, Adrian laughed it off. I remembered something else. Several times over the previous year, Victor had asked me unusual questions. What do you think destroys family wealth faster, Tessy? Bad investments or bad judgment? Another time, if someone inherits more money than they can emotionally handle, should they still control all of it? I had assumed he was speaking generally. He owned companies, property, investments. People like Victor thought about inheritance. I never imagined he was studying us. The next morning, my phone rang while I was getting dressed. Adrian. I answered. You're up early, he said. I have work. He laughed. You still care about work? I still have a job. Well, I won't need one much longer. I said nothing. He continued eagerly. You remember Daniel Pierce, the guy who stopped returning your calls? He called me last night. I almost smiled. Of course he did. And Marcus wants to discuss a property development. Everybody suddenly has ideas. Adrian. What? Did you read the will? His voice hardened. Again with this? Yes, lawyers complicate everything. Victor left me the family fortune. That's what matters. That isn't how estates work. I know enough. No, you know a number. Silence. Then he snapped. You're bitter. I signed the separation papers. Exactly. Maybe now you regret it. I looked at myself in the hotel mirror. No, Adrian. I'm wondering why a man who says he inherited $800 million still hasn't bothered to read the document that supposedly gives it to him. Before he could answer, another call appeared on my screen. Unknown number. I have to go. Who's calling? I don't know. I ended the call and answered the second. Hello, a composed woman spoke. Mrs. Morgan? Yes, my name is Evelyn Shaw. I represent the estate of Victor Morgan. I straightened. Yes? I'm calling regarding a formal estate meeting. I think you want my husband. A pause. No, Mrs. Morgan. I'm calling you. My grip tightened around the phone. Why? There are matters involving Mr. Morgan's trust that require your presence. His trust? Yes. I sat slowly on the edge of the bed. What exactly does that have to do with me? I'd rather explain in person. The meeting is tomorrow at 10. I wrote down the address. When the call ended, Adrian rang again almost immediately. I answered. Who was that? I frowned. Were you waiting? Was it Evelyn Shaw? Yes. His tone changed. What did she want? She asked me to attend the estate meeting. Silence. Then why? I don't know. That makes no sense. I agree. What did you tell her? That I'd attend. You shouldn't. I blinked. Why not? Because this has nothing to do with you. You were the one who wanted me out of your life. That doesn't mean you get involved with my inheritance. I didn't involve myself. Your uncle's attorney called me. Adrian's breathing grew heavier. You're trying something. What exactly am I trying? I don't know yet. That seems to be your answer to a lot of things. He hung up. A minute later, my phone remained silent, but Adrian was no longer calling me. He was calling Evelyn. I only learned what happened because she phoned me back 20 minutes later. Mrs. Morgan, she said, her voice measured, your husband contacted me. I assumed he might. He demanded that I remove you from tomorrow's meeting. I closed my eyes and I told him I could not. What did he say? He asked why. There was a brief pause. Then Evelyn said the sentence that finally made Adrian's excitement feel less like a victory and more like a countdown. Because your uncle specifically required Mrs. Morgan's presence. By the time Adrian was supposed to meet Victor's attorney, he had already introduced himself to half the city as an $800 million heir. I found that out without speaking to him. That evening, my phone lit up with a message from Melissa, an old mutual acquaintance. Tessy, are you okay? I just heard about you and Adrian. Before I could answer, another arrived. He's having dinner at the Grand Meridian. He told everyone Victor left him $800 million. I stared at the message. Then another acquaintance wrote, Adrian said you two separated because he's moving into a different kind of life now. That one made me put my phone down. While I sat alone in a hotel room with 2 suitcases, Adrian was celebrating the fortune that had supposedly made me unnecessary. At the restaurant, according to the messages that followed, he had gathered several former business contacts around a private table. Daniel Pierce, the same man who had ignored Adrian's calls months earlier, was there. So was Marcus Bell, who suddenly wanted Adrian involved in a property development. Adrian apparently loved the attention. Victor always intended for me to take over, he told them. Someone asked, all 800 million, the entire estate. And Tessy? Adrian laughed. Tessy is part of my old life. Another guest asked the obvious question, won't she claim part of the inheritance? No chance. She already signed the separation papers. He raised his glass. She walked away without touching a dollar. I didn't respond to any of the messages. The following morning, I arrived at Evelyn Shaw's office at 9:55. Adrian was already there, and he wasn't alone. A sharply dressed man sat beside him carrying a leather portfolio. Adrian looked at my plain work clothes and smiled. You actually came. Your uncle's attorney asked me to. The man beside him stood. Richard Cole, financial advisor. I shook his hand. Adrian leaned back. Richard is helping me plan the estate. Before you've read the will? His jaw tightened. Can we not do this again? Evelyn entered before he could say more. Good morning. She placed several thick folders on the conference table. Adrian immediately leaned forward. Can we finally settle this? Evelyn opened the first folder. Victor Morgan's estate includes business holdings, securities, real property and other assets. Current valuation is approximately $800 million. Adrian smiled. He glanced at me as though the sentence proved everything. Thank you. Evelyn continued. However, Mr. Morgan did not leave those assets directly to you. The smile disappeared. What? The assets were transferred into the Victor Morgan family trust. Richard stopped writing. Adrian frowned. But I'm the beneficiary. You are a named beneficiary, so it's mine. No. The room became completely still. Evelyn folded her hands. A beneficiary can receive benefits according to the terms of a trust. That does not mean the beneficiary personally owns or controls every asset held by that trust. Adrian stared at her. You told me Victor's estate was worth 800 million. It is, and I'm his beneficiary. You are. Then what exactly are we arguing about? We aren't arguing. I'm explaining the legal structure your uncle created. Adrian pushed his chair back slightly. Fine, who controls it? Evelyn opened another folder. Richard leaned forward again. I remained silent. I still didn't understand why I had been required to attend. Evelyn turned several pages toward us. Adrian's eyes moved quickly across the document, then stopped. His expression changed. He leaned closer. My stomach tightened when I saw what had caught his attention. My name, Tessy Morgan. It appeared once, then again, and again. Adrian looked at me. What is this? I don't know. Your name is all over Victor's documents. I can see that. He turned sharply toward Evelyn. Why? Richard had stopped taking notes entirely. Adrian jabbed his finger against the page. What does my wife have to do with my uncle's $800 million? Evelyn didn't flinch. She calmly pulled the document back toward herself. Morgan, your uncle did leave instructions about the $800 million. Adrian stared at her. Evelyn turned one final page. You simply stopped reading before you reached the part about your wife. Adrian snatched the document back across the table. What part about my wife? His eyes raced down the page. For the first time since his phone call to me at work, he wasn't smiling. Slow down, Evelyn said. I don't need to slow down. You misunderstood the first part because you didn't read carefully. I suggest you don't repeat that mistake. Richard, Adrian's new financial advisor, shifted uncomfortably beside him. I stayed quiet. Then I noticed a phrase on the document, independent oversight. Suddenly, Victor's strange questions over the previous year didn't seem strange anymore. What did Victor do? Adrian demanded. Evelyn folded her hands. Your uncle was concerned about how you handled money. Adrian laughed sharply. So he punished me? That is not what I said. Then what are all these restrictions? Protection. From whom? Evelyn held his gaze. Primarily from yourself. Adrian pushed back from the table. That's ridiculous. Victor documented several reasons for creating the trust structure. Adrian turned toward me. This was you. What? You got into his head? I stared at him. You threw me out yesterday because you thought you had $800 million. Now you're blaming me because you didn't read the paperwork? You were always talking to Victor at family dinners about money because he asked questions. Adrian pointed at me. You manipulated him. Evelyn interrupted. No. Adrian turned. What? Mrs. Morgan had no involvement in drafting Mr. Morgan's estate plan. She was not informed of its final terms. I looked at Evelyn. So Victor really never told me? No. Adrian sank back into his chair. Richard finally spoke. Adrian, there's another problem. What now? The property purchase you discussed with me yesterday cannot be structured the way you proposed. Adrian frowned. Why? Because you told me you personally controlled the estate. I will. Richard shook his head. Not according to these documents. Adrian's face reddened. What about the investment fund? Same problem. The development with Marcus? You cannot pledge trust assets as your personal collateral unless the trust documents specifically permit it. Adrian stared at him. In less than 2 minutes, the penthouse, investments, and business deals he had been boasting about were beginning to disappear. How much can I access? He demanded. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. How much? Your distributions are governed by Victor's written conditions and the administration of the trust. I'm his nephew and a beneficiary. Then give me a number. That is precisely the attitude your uncle designed this structure to prevent. Adrian stood. His chair scraped loudly across the floor. He looked at me again, but the contempt from the apartment was gone. Now there was something else. Fear. Tessy. I said nothing. Did you know? No, not even a hint. Then I remembered Victor. A quiet conversation after dinner months earlier. He had asked me, if someone treated you badly, but you were responsible for protecting something that belonged to them, could you still do it? I had laughed because the question seemed absurd. My answer had been simple. I'd protect what was entrusted to me. That doesn't mean I'd protect them from consequences. Victor had nodded. Nothing more. Sitting in Evelyn's office, I finally understood that he had not been making conversation. He had been evaluating me. Adrian began pacing. I'll challenge it. Evelyn watched him. I'll hire my own attorneys. Victor was my uncle. If he tried putting ridiculous restrictions between me and my inheritance, I'll challenge every one of them. Adrian, Richard started. No, $800 million doesn't get controlled by strangers while I ask permission. Evelyn reached into the final folder. Mr. Morgan. He kept talking. I don't care what Victor wrote. I'm his family, and if somebody thinks Tessy can somehow... Mr. Morgan. Evelyn placed one document on the table. The sound stopped him. This is the trust appointment. Adrian looked down. So did I. I read the heading first, then the first paragraph, then my full legal name. Adrian's face drained of color. His eyes moved from the document to me. For less than 48 hours, he had treated me like discarded baggage because he believed money had finally made him powerful. Now he was looking at me as though he had just realized he might have thrown the wrong person out. I reached into my bag and removed my copy of our signed separation agreement. I placed it beside Victor's document. Adrian stared at both papers. I closed the agreement slowly. Adrian, I said, before you celebrate another dollar, double-check the will. Adrian read the heading again, then a third time. His finger stopped beside my name. This can't mean what I think it means. Evelyn remained composed. It means exactly what it says. He looked at me. I didn't answer because I was still trying to understand it myself. Evelyn turned the document toward us. Victor Morgan transferred the qualifying assets of his estate into the Victor Morgan Family Trust. Mr. Morgan, you are a beneficiary of that trust. You did not personally inherit unrestricted ownership of $800 million. Adrian shook his head. But I'm his nephew. That fact has not changed. He wanted me to have the money. He wanted you to benefit from his estate under specific conditions. Adrian slapped his palm against the table. Who controls those conditions? Evelyn tapped the appointment document. Your uncle appointed professional legal and investment administrators to manage the trust alongside an independent controlling trustee. Adrian slowly turned toward me. Evelyn finished the sentence. Tessy Morgan. Silence. I stared at her. Me? Yes. Adrian shot out of his chair. You gave my wife control of my money. I gave nobody anything. Victor created these instructions months before his death. It's my family's fortune. Evelyn's expression hardened. It is the trust property administered according to your uncle's instructions. Adrian pointed at me. So she gets $800 million. No, that stopped him. Evelyn looked at me. Mrs. Morgan, being trustee does not make these assets yours. You have fiduciary responsibilities. You must follow the trust terms, protect its assets, and approve only distributions permitted under those terms. You cannot simply take the money. I nodded slowly. So Victor gave me responsibility, not ownership. Exactly. Adrian laughed bitterly. This is insane. Evelyn opened another section. Your uncle did not think so. She explained that Victor had watched Adrian for years. He had seen the failed ventures, the debts, the impulsive financial decisions, and he had also seen what happened afterward. Me quietly repairing the damage. Victor specifically noted, Evelyn continued, that Mrs. Morgan repeatedly helped stabilize your finances without using your dependents to humiliate you. Adrian looked away. Evelyn continued, he believed unrestricted access to extraordinary wealth would encourage your worst financial instincts. And Tessy knew all this? No. She must have. She did not participate in drafting the plan. She was not informed of her appointment before Victor's death. I finally spoke. Adrian, yesterday morning, I didn't even know Victor had died. His eyes met mine. You expect me to believe this is coincidence? No. I expect you to believe the documents you should have read before throwing me out. That silenced him. For a moment, he simply stood there. Then something remarkable happened. His voice softened. Tessy, I knew that tone. I had heard it after failed businesses, overdue bills, and bad decisions. The voice Adrian used when he needed me. We don't have to rush the separation. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. You prepared the papers. I was emotional. You packed my suitcases. I had just received enormous news. You told me you didn't need me. He lowered his voice. People say things. I reached into my bag and placed the signed agreement between us. You didn't say something during an argument, Adrian. You planned it. You called me at work, ordered me out, packed my belongings, and had papers waiting. We've been married 8 years. Doesn't that mean anything? I stared at him. When you thought you personally controlled $800 million, 8 years meant nothing to you. His jaw tightened. That isn't fair. It is exactly what happened. Richard quietly closed his portfolio. Adrian barely noticed. I pushed the separation agreement toward him. Yesterday, you thought money made me unnecessary. Today, you discover I have a responsibility connected to that money, and suddenly our marriage deserves another chance. Tessy, no. One word, no shouting, no revenge speech, just the answer he had earned. Over the following days, Adrian discovered how expensive premature confidence could become. The penthouse disappeared first. There was no purchase because he couldn't simply use trust assets as though $800 million had appeared in his bank account. The investment plan stalled. Marcus's property proposal went nowhere once it became clear Adrian couldn't personally pledge the fortune behind it. And the people who had rushed to his celebration began disappearing almost as quickly as they had arrived. Daniel stopped calling. Others became suddenly busy. The story Adrian had told everyone, that Victor had handed him an unrestricted $800 million fortune, collapsed under the simplest question: where was the money? Adrian was still a beneficiary. Victor had not erased him, but distributions had to follow the trust. I couldn't deny him something Victor legally allowed simply because Adrian had hurt me. And I couldn't give him something Victor prohibited because Adrian begged. Every major decision was documented with the professional administrators that mattered to me. I didn't want Victor's fortune to become another weapon inside our failed marriage. Adrian spoke to independent attorneys about challenging the structure. He quickly discovered that being angry about restrictions was not the same thing as proving a properly established trust invalid. The fortune existed, he could benefit from it, but the fantasy was over. The $800 million was never his personal checking account. Our separation continued too. This time Adrian didn't celebrate it. I moved into an apartment of my own, smaller than the penthouse Adrian had imagined buying, but peaceful. I kept my job. Before formally accepting my trustee responsibilities, I obtained independent legal advice, so I understood exactly what Victor had asked of me. I would follow his instructions, nothing more, nothing less. Months passed. Adrian received the benefits he was legitimately entitled to under the trust, but he never again introduced himself as the man who could spend $800 million whenever he wanted. As for me, I stopped wondering whether I had somehow failed our marriage. Victor had been right about one thing. Money hadn't transformed Adrian in a single afternoon. It had simply convinced him that there would no longer be consequences for showing me how little he valued everything I had done for him. One evening, months after the separation was finalized, I opened the locked drawer in my desk. Inside were two documents: my copy of the separation agreement and Victor Morgan's trust appointment. I placed them beside each other. One showed the day Adrian decided I had no value because he thought he had become rich. The other showed just how badly he had misunderstood what his uncle had left behind. I closed the drawer and turned the key. The fortune didn't cost Adrian his marriage. It only gave him enough confidence to throw away the woman who had been holding his life together, and by the time he double-checked the will, I had already decided no amount of money could buy me back.